What is up guys, it's Troy at the Full Setup back with another benchmark review. Now in today's video we will be benchmarking the GTX 1650's 1080p gaming performance. So I will be benchmarking the GTX 1650 and Ryzen 2600 at 1080p low to ultra settings. I will be testing 11 games for you today with a mix of stock and overclock results for you. And as a huge thank you to you all, I'm also running another competition and you can find out how to enter at the end of this video. As for the GTX 1650, I'm using an MSI Ventus XC0C with 4GB of GDDR5. Now this GTX 1650 has a max boost rating of 1740MHz, but as you can see here on screen, out of the box boosts are much higher if you keep your graphics card nice and cool. Now there is a full specification list of the PC that I'm using in the description for you, but I will just give you a brief overview. So as already mentioned, I'm using a Ryzen 2600, but I'm just going to be running it at its stock 3.8GHz for the entire video. Because this is quite a low powered graphics card, there really isn't any need to overclock the CPU, so I thought I would just do stock CPU results for you. As for the motherboard, I'm running it on an Asus X370 Crosshair motherboard, and I'm also pairing it with 16GB of DDR4 running at 3200MHz. Now I am using a 600W power supply today, which is completely overkill with this graphics card as it only draws 75 watts as it doesn't require an external PCIe power connector. Before we start with the review, I want to say a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Skillshare. Now I'm someone that truly believes you are never too young, old or busy to learn a new skill. Whether it's perfecting your latest hobby or learning new skills for your dream job, I truly believe if you want something from life, it's only yourself that stops you from getting it, and Skillshare is here to help. Skillshare features over 28,000 classes and currently has over 4 million students. Honestly, if you want to learn something, you can almost guarantee that Skillshare has a course for you. Now I'm currently working my way through their Adobe Premiere Pro courses, and one thing I have loved is the amount of tips and tricks videos. These are perfect for me when my work and YouTube life is reaching peak levels. I think you will all love what Skillshare has to offer, and they have kindly offered 2 months free subscription for the first 500 signups. And if you're loving your new life of self-learning after the 2-month period, Skillshare offers full access to their 28,000 courses for as little as £7 a month. You can find out more about Skillshare and how to get your 2 months free in the description below. Let's start with stock versus overclock performance for you then. Now I have already made an overclocking guide video for the GTX 1650 and there will be a link for that in the description. If not, just pop over to the channel. Now in that video I overclocked it 150MHz on the core, but I have since then had crashes on 2 games with that overclock, so I'm going to do the overclock at 125MHz for the core throughout this video. Now as for memory, you should easily be able to add 500MHz to the memory as well. Now if this isn't making a lot of sense to you, definitely go and watch the overclocking video. But one thing I did notice is that even though we're adding quite a bit to the core, you will see that boost rating drop down quite a bit after a bit of usage. And I really don't think that's a thermal limitation. I think it's something to do with the fact that this graphics card can only pull 75 watts. So for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we are running at high settings with SMAA. Now at stock, we have a minimum of 44 and an average of 53 frames per second. When we overclock the graphics card, there is a minimum of 47 and an average of 59 frames per second. Moving on to Far Cry 5, again at high settings, at stock we have a minimum of 49 and an average of 59 frames per second. Now overclocking the GPU gives us a minimum of 55 and reaches us past 60 and we get 65 frames per second. Now for Shadow of War, I'm also running at high settings with FXAA. Now at stock we have a minimum of 41 and an average of 60 frames per second. Overclocking the graphics card gives us a minimum of 44 and an average of 65 frames per second. Now for the rest of the video we will just be focusing on gameplay footage for you. But we are still going to run the GPU overclocked, and part of the reason is, I always explain this in all of my videos, is because I don't use a capture card, I use Nvidia Shadow to record. So Shadow is going to lose us about anywhere up to 5 frames per second, and overclocking will gain us anywhere up to 5 frames per second. So what you're seeing on screen here is actually much closer to stock than it is overclocked. Now as you can see, this graphics card has no trouble running Devil May Cry 5 at ultra settings. This isn't a very demanding game at all, and you will find for the most that your frame rates will always be above 100 frames per second. Moving over to PUBG then, now we're playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds at the settings I like to play at. So this is everything set to low, but view distance set to ultra. So these are sort of the competitive settings I like to play at. And as you can see, the GTX 1650 has no issues running frame rates just over 100 FPS. I did see the odd dip down to 80 frames per second, but you will get very high frame rates with the GTX 1650 playing at these settings. Now, moving it up to Ultra, but with AA set to medium, and as you can see, it's going to be around the 60 FPS mark, but you will see frame rates drop. You will see drops down to maybe 50 or 45 frames per second. If you do want to play this game at high textures, I always recommend playing it at low settings anyway. I would probably go for high settings or a mix of high and medium, and then you will always be above that 60 FPS mark. Moving over to Metro Exodus, and the first thing I need to state is that the overclock settings you'll see in the overlay are not applied, so you will probably get about 5 FPS higher than what you are seeing on screen here. Now, it really is a mixed bag when it comes to what settings I would use with the GTX 1650. So early on in the game, where the frame rates are much higher, I would probably say you can get away with playing this game at high settings. But when you get to the desert location, frame rates really do take a dip. So I'm running this at medium settings, and I do have tessellation and hairworks both turned off, and you will see some dips under 60 FPS. But with these settings, it should mostly keep you above the 60 FPS mark. Moving over to Apex Legends then, and I've got some super noob footage for you. I don't know, I haven't had enough time to play this game yet. I think I've said it in a few other videos. Now, I have been doing a few live streams with One Shot from Rules of Entertainment, but I probably should have recorded some of that footage because I did actually get some kills there. But when it comes to running Apex at low settings, it really doesn't struggle at hitting the 100 FPS mark, pushing just past 100 FPS. A little bit like PUBG, where you will see some drops down to the 80 FPS mark, especially as the ring gets tighter and you've got a few teams all going at each other, maybe some smokes going off as well. You will see some frame rate dips, but generally over 100 FPS at low settings. Now, cranking it up to high settings, and I thought this game was going to take a bigger hit. I thought it would probably be a bit like PUBG, hovering around the 60 FPS mark, but you will find that frame rates for the most are actually pushing between 70 and 80 frames per second. I did have 1 or 2 dips under 60, but for the most, generally it was always running at 80 frames per second at high settings. And finally, probably the most demanding game we're going to test today, or one of the most demanding games, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Now, this is a game that really, it depends how you like to play it. Like, I rather have some slightly lower texture qualities and higher FPS, but I know a lot of people would be happy to just play this game maxed out at 30 frames per second and almost have like a console experience, but looking a little bit better. Now, you could probably run this game at high settings if you turned a few things off, maybe like volumetric clouds, drop the AA down a little bit, and you probably could, but I've just gone for a preset today, so I'm running it at medium settings, and as you can see, for the most, it is staying above 60 FPS. You may see the odd dip down. I think the only problem I would say for Assassin's Creed Odyssey would be for a budget gamer would be CPU usage, because it's banging the Ryzen 2600 and it absolutely cooks the Intel i5-8400 as well. So if you were an Assassin's Creed, big Assassin's Creed fan, you do need a good CPU to play that game on PC. So there were the benchmark results for you, and obviously I need to give my thoughts and feelings on this graphics card. Now, I'm a little bit later with this review than I would normally be. Now, sometimes life throws curveballs at you and you need to help the people around you. Family and friends come before my YouTube channel, and it has been a difficult couple of weeks. But I have been watching lots of content on the GTX 1650, and I must say I agree with what everyone else is saying, that there is no reason whatsoever to buy this graphics card over an RX 570. But there are a couple of use cases that I still need to discuss on it. So the GTX 1650 does hold the crown for being the most powerful graphics card that does not require a PCIe connector. Now, it's not a huge upgrade over a 1050 Ti, but as I discussed extensively in my GTX 1660 video, although you may think that you're supposed to get 3-4 times the performance every generation, that does not happen at the lower end range. You need to sometimes take a step back from rumor videos and leak videos that hype you and hype you and hype you and make you actually believe fact from fiction, and actually really assess the way lower and mid-range GPU markets work. So both Nvidia and AMD always compare their lower mid-range graphics cards to 2 to 3 generations behind, because that is how often people upgrade. They know that, they have the marketing data, that is when people upgrade their graphics cards. Of course, me as a consumer, I would love to have 4 or 5 times the performance every time, but for them as a business standpoint, it makes no sense to do that for you. Now, Nvidia were never ever going to release an RX 570 computer at that price. I still don't understand why they released this GPU, but they just weren't, because that would cannibalize their GTX 1660 and 1660 Ti sales. And if you did want an upgrade from a 1050 Ti, it was never going to be the 1650. It was always going to be the 1660 or the 1660 Ti. Now, I know one very big argument that some of you are probably going to put forward to me is that you could buy an older OEM PC like a HP or a Dell with an i5 in it. You can pick those up anywhere between like 100 and 200 pounds. Pair it with this GPU and you've got pretty good 1080p gaming performance. And I would agree with you. In esports titles, so in like League of Legends, CSGO, Fortnite, Apex Legends, all of those titles, you are going to get really, really good performance out of this graphics card. It's going to be a very quick PC for you to put together. Again, you don't need to buy the power supply as well, so there's going to be some savings there. Okay, 250 to 300 pounds, I agree with you, that would be a good starting gaming PC. But the problem is going to be when you move on to more demanding AAA titles. So I'm talking about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, games like Battlefield 5, very CPU heavy titles. Now, you will not see a performance difference over a 1050 Ti, because on those older i5s, they still bottleneck a 1050 Ti on those titles. You will run into some bottlenecks playing Battlefield titles. So you will have the same bottlenecks with the GTX 1650. So yeah, for an esports cheap gaming rig, I could probably recommend this graphics card, but I would still recommend buying an RX 570 and buying a power supply. I just think it's a better buy. Now, another huge argument is, I know a lot of people are going to say, is power draw, because this only sucks 75 watts from the wall and the RX 570 is 150 watts from the wall. Now, it's hard for me to say this because I know you all pay different power bills across, you know, wherever you live in the world. Your power prices are going to vary, but 150 watt GPU isn't going to cost you a lot of money. That isn't like hundreds or thousands of pounds a year, even if you game a lot. And if you game heavy, you're happy to pay the power consumption anyway. So I really don't think power consumption can be an argument here, because if you want a very good mid-range gaming experience, 1080p gaming experience, you will be sucking between 120 and 200 watts. That's going to be it with whatever GPU that you buy. That is going to be the power consumption that you use. And as we can see, you still can't have a gaming performance that good from drawing 75 watts. So yeah, I'm waffling on. As you know, I always do waffle on, but you know, I'm not recommending it. And you can call me a fanboy if you want, because I have recommended every other Nvidia graphics card I've reviewed in probably the last 18 months over whatever AMD has. I have literally recommended every Nvidia GPU that I have tested over whatever sort of AMD graphics card you can pick up for a similar price. But here, I cannot. The RX 570 for £125 with 2 free games, it's too good. That is too well priced. Remember, the 570 is a 480, so you're saying, you know, a 480 was £250 a couple of years ago. So for that much performance, for that price with 2 games, I cannot recommend it over the GTX 1650, and I'm going to stop waffling right there. Moving over to the competition then. Well, this competition is international. Anyone can enter. It ends on the 27th of May. Now, all you have to do is be a subscriber to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well, so you get notifications to all my great content, and there is a link in the video to my Discord server. So all you have to do is go over to Discord. You will see there is a competition page on there. If you can't find it, just ask someone over there. They'll show you where you need to go, and then all you need to do is simply leave a message saying enter. Now, as for the giveaway, we have a bit of a weird combination, is what a few of the people were saying over on the Discord. So firstly, we have the Mixcder, I think that's how it's pronounced, active noise cancellation headphones. They come with this really lovely case. Active noise cancellation works on it very, very well indeed, and they only actually cost about £50. I have been thoroughly impressed with these Bluetooth headphones. They did send over 2 pairs, so I'm going to be keeping a pair for myself, been using them daily, and I will be sending out a pair for you. Now, the other part of this competition is just weird. I mean, I do get messaged from quite a few weird brands that want to send things over, and I'm like, look, it doesn't really fit with the channel. I mean, just before Christmas, somebody wanted to send me out potato peelers to review. I sort of said, hey, look, we're a gaming channel here. But this thing, do you know what? At first, I thought it would be really bad, but everyone who has played with these loves them, and I really enjoy them as well. So this is the VintFun gaming swatter. Yes, I said that right. This is a gaming fly swatter. No, you can't play games with it, but basically when you kill stuff with it, it makes gaming sounds. Here are the sounds. Now, VintFun have actually sent me over quite a few of these, so I am going to be giving away these gaming swatters sort of bundled with all of my competitions for the next few months, so definitely make sure you check out those videos as well. Anyway, that's it from me today. If you like the video, leave a like. If you dislike the video, leave a dislike, and let me know your thoughts on what you would buy out of a GTX 1650 or an RX 570.